There we go. I just want to welcome everyone for coming. We're really looking forward to this meeting and to this panel, and we have some excellent faculty leaders. Oh, there's Todd. Hi, Todd. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
We have some oh, it's okay. We have some excellent faculty leaders, some top leaders from a number of community colleges in the state. And this is an opportunity, despite cultural differences at our colleges, there are a lot of similarities. And oftentimes, since I've been a part of TCCTA leadership, I have shared with others on the executive committee and things that we are struggling with sometimes at our college at Tarrant, another college has already worked through, and things that maybe some of my colleagues are struggling with at their college, we've worked through. So this is a great time to share information, depend on each other, and help each other. And I really want to put a shout out to Missy Patterson. Missy is on the panel today. She's also vice president of TCCTA. And when she started on the executive committee, she's just blown us all away by her leadership. But also she had this great idea about getting faculty from different colleges statewide together so that we can share best practices like this. And there were a couple of face-to-face meetings. That was before COVID hit, and they were well attended and folks really enjoyed them. So we wanted to expand these opportunities. And so we've all been brainstorming, Richard, Linda Comte, Missy, and I, about what we can do to expand these opportunities. So we've got a plan for this year for at least 4 meetings. We'll have 2 that will be face-to-face, but also recorded. We might have a virtual option on those. Those will align with our fall conference for faculty leaders and with convention. So we'll have a session that will be for faculty leaders like this, where we can share best practices with each other on topics that we feel are important. Then we'll have 2 online meetings. This one, we'll have another one in the spring. And I think that will make it easy for folks to attend also. So the next meeting like this will be October 8th through 9th at the Fall Faculty Leaders Conference. And I hope you all can attend that. Take a look online and fill out the registration. Our registration costs for conferences are so low. So it's a real reasonable type conference. And we're going to be offering virtual attendance options as well as face-to-face. If there are people who have classes or are uncomfortable about getting out at this time, you might look at the virtual options. So at that meeting in October, we'll have Michael Kim. He is the TCCTA attorney, and he can talk to us about shared governance, and then we can ask him any questions that we have about shared governance. But for this particular meeting, we're going to focus on structural organization. We'll have about 35 minutes or so to talk about our structural differences and to compare. And then in the next part, we'll talk about shared governance issues that dive deeper. And that will be about 35 minutes. And then we'll have time for questions in between each of those portions. And this is a discussion. We set this Zoom call up as a discussion. So it wouldn't be just broadcasting. So everyone who's here, feel free to jump in and ask some questions, and it's a dialogue. And I want to introduce Linda Comte. One of the questions that we'll deal with under the structural organization section is, how do we keep our most experienced leaders active in the faculty association and depend on them for advice because they've learned the role. And Linda, with TCCTA, we have an immediate past president role, which has been so great. So when we have any challenges we have to deal with as an executive committee, she's there and she has been through it. And so I'm looking forward to hearing how your faculty associations keep your past presidents and past leaders active. But I want to introduce Linda. She is going to introduce our panelists, and thank you, Linda.
You're welcome, Stacy. Thank you very much. Well, this afternoon, I'm going to introduce the panelists, and I'm grateful. It's going to be a great session. And I'm doing it alphabetically just so I don't miss people, and I thought that was the best way to do it. So we have, first of all, Michael Berberich from Galveston College. Michael has been with Galveston College for 33 years, and he's been active in the faculty association that entire time. He has actually been teaching for 38 years, and he teaches English, humanities, intro to film, and philosophy. Our next panelist is Todd Bish. Todd is from Houston Community College. He's been teaching there for 30 years, and he's been active in the Senate since 2009. He's a past president of the Senate, which was 2012, 2013, and he's currently the chair of the Compensation Committee there. He teaches OSHA safety in the corrections program in the School of Continuing Education. And prior to 2016, he taught basic construction also in the corrections program. Then we have Mike Downs from Tarrant County College. Mike has been part of the Faculty Association, and he began working at TCC 15 years ago. He's been teaching for 19 years, and he teaches history. We have Wade Hyde from Dallas College. He's been an active member of the Centro Campus Faculty Association since he began teaching part-time, it looks like, and he's been full-time at Dallas since 2013, but he taught 12 years before as an adjunct before he became a full-time faculty member in 2013. So basically, he's been there for 20 years. He teaches marketing, retailing, customer service, sales, and project management within the School of Business, Hospitality, and Global Trade. And then we have Missy Patterson, who is from Austin Community College. She is actually currently the vice president of TCCTA, and she's been at ACC since 1999. She's been involved with the Senate since 2008, and she's in her last year of what I understand to be a 3-year presidency of her faculty senate. And she's been teaching overall since 1995. She teaches psychology and has taught intro psych, human growth and development, and human sexuality. So we have some great panelists here who've been around and know what they're doing. Just our moderators today will be Stacy, our TCCTA president. She's also at Tarrant County College in English and department chair of English. And then we have Richard Moore, our executive director. So I'm going to throw it back to those. Oh, wait, one other thing. As Stacy said, this is a discussion, but to make sure we kind of get through things in time-wise, if things of a section becomes too long, one of the moderators may kind of move us along a little bit, but you will have all the contact information for the panelists and any EC member that you would like to contact, have further discussion. Okay, so I'll throw it now to Stacy.
Okay, let's start with the questions for the first half about structural organization. So the first one, please describe how your institution's faculty association and/or senate is organized and what you see as the strengths and weaknesses of that model. Would you start us off, Wade?
Sure. It's kind of goofy that I would be the first one because Dallas, for those of you who don't know, Dallas College is in a period of transition, just like what Austin and some of the other colleges went through earlier. We used to be 7 independently accredited institutions. Now we're one big one. Our faculty association is still structured as if we were 7 independent colleges. So we have a council made up of 1 representative from each of the 7 campuses. We're currently literally in the middle of figuring out, well, does that still make sense? And because Dallas College has also separated into 7 schools of, which are not campus dependent. So the question becomes now is, well, do we need to have representation that represents the schools, or do we keep a campus representation or a hybrid that does both? How are we going to do it? If you can figure it out, let me know. we're going to be voting on that actually in a special convention during return week and see if we can get some answers. But regardless, we try to have a broad representation that represents both geographic and the schools of.
The move to that one college model is so difficult, and there are some benefits, but then there are some really painful challenges in that growth as well. Thank you so much, Wade, and please keep us informed about what happens in the vote. Missy, what about you?
So yes, as Wade said, we've recently gone through our own reorg because we went to the guided pathways model. We started feeling like we're a little bit less identifying with our campus and more with our areas of study. So this year was our first year having elections with our new bylaws. And we attempted, Wade, a hybrid model. I'm going to say it wasn't super fun. So we tried to have some representatives who were from our areas of study while maintaining some representatives for the campus. And it was just a real challenge to get nominees, to get the elections worked through. So I really think there might be a space for hybrids, but committing to a model might be the best plan. So I would say that a strength of our model is that we have a 3-year commitment to the presidency, which is very helpful. I would say a weakness of our model currently would be that and maybe it's a strength too, but our leadership teams. So, you know, the treasurer, the secretary, the communications officer, all of those folks in our model, they have to be elected senator first, and then the president gets to offer them a space on the leadership team. And that can be difficult sometimes because if you don't know some of the senators, it's harder to make a selection for the leadership team. So I think that can be a weakness, but it's a strength in that our president does get to choose their own leadership team. They're not elected at large. So that can be helpful. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Missy, you mentioned that your president has a 3-year commitment. Could you tell us a little bit more about why you see this as a strength?
Well, because we have basically, you serve as president-elect, then your president, then your past president. And it just gives us time to shadow each other, stay connected, and learn from each other, because it's a big job. And so having a team approach is really valuable. And quick shout out, our president-elect is here on this call. So hi, Sam.
Hi, Sam. Welcome. Glad you're here. Mike Downs. Can you fill us in?
Sure. At Tarrant County College, we're one college, but we have 6 campuses, one of which is a virtual campus, TCC Connect. And each campus has its own faculty association with a president and a president-elect. And in order to be elected to president-elect, you had to have been a senator in the past. And then, of course, as elect, you would become president in the next year. So there's some continuity there. The presidents and president-elects from each campuses, so that's 12 people, all together form what's called the Joint Consultation Committee, which is JCC. So for our college-wide faculty association, we refer to it sort of as the JCC, or at least those are the leaders within the faculty association. And on top of those 12, or in addition to those 12 individuals, there is one JCC chair. And that's the role I'm serving in this year. And this meant that I would have been the JCC chair-elect last year. And that is a rather challenging role because you also are one of the 6 faculty association presidents at a campus. So you serve 2 roles there. That's really a challenging position. But it's ultimately, to get to this position, it's a 3-year commitment. So again, we have that kind of longevity and continuity. Although it seems like you do kind of really get familiar with this job and then you rotate off of it. And that probably with many of these systems or structures, that's a strength and a weakness, I suppose, because on the one hand, it takes a while just to get your legs under how does this really work? You deal with a lot of other people at different levels at this level in the college. But at the same time, if it became a much longer commitment, I'm not sure what the pool of applicants would be at that point as well. So it's a balancing act as well. But that's how it works at TCC.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, Mike's done a stand-up job as incoming JCC chair. So thanks for all your work there. Todd Bish, can you tell us about the structure of your faculty association?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Couple things. All our officers, the president, president-elect, treasurer, secretary, they're all elected every year. The president and the president-elect must come from the group of senators. We currently have 80+ senators, and they're elected once a year by division faculty. If you're English faculty, the English faculty will vote for their representatives, and the number of sitting senators from each division is based on the number of contact hours for that division, and that will determine how many seats they have in the Senate. The president gets a full release for the year. It's a 1-year term, and the president-elect will get a 3-hour release in the spring semester to begin shadowing the current one. The president or vice president is usually responsible for the Senate elections in the spring. The treasurer obviously handles the finances of the group, and they also chair the finance committee, and a subcommittee of that is our Berberich Arm and Adjunct Faculty Professional Development Fund that we have an auction and dinner every year to raise funds for adjunct faculty professional development. Let's see what else can we talk about. As I said, we have 80-something senators. It runs fairly smoothly. It has been a trying year. I know Daniel Dilla, who's our current president, trying to run some hybrid meetings, with all his meetings have just been going on and on. We have just recently gone to face-to-face and a hybrid meeting for the Faculty Senate, which will be meeting later this month because it is the start of the new semester. In fact, I just came from our Compensation Committee meeting that we had with most of the vice chancellors. Unfortunately, the chancellor couldn't make it today. So it's been a busy year, and I'm happy to answer any other questions. And I hope I covered enough that you get an idea of what we're doing.
Well, you all have been leading during a crisis, so you can really tell what somebody's made of when you're leading during a crisis. We've never experienced anything like pandemic, and then going online, and it's as hard, maybe even more difficult to come back after everybody's transitioned online. So thanks so much to all of you for your service to Texas Community College faculty. We appreciate you. I see Linda Compte's hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in because Todd talked about the structure of the Senate now, but to earlier panelists, we just went from being colleges back to a centralized system in the last several years. And prior to that, the structure was senators were elected from each of the colleges. And so as you see, the resolution that the Senate came up with is what Todd has described now, which is it's discipline specific. And so, that was our resolution to how do you go from campus representation when you go back to being a system. So I just wanted to throw that in so that would be part of the thinking for folks.
Thanks, Linda. Michael, can you tell us about the structure of your faculty association? Oh, Michael.
You're muted. I'm muting myself. There we go. Am I good now?
Great. Yes,
okay.
We hear you.
Well, that's okay because I stuttered when I first started talking a second ago. But I'm Michael Berberich. I'm with Galveston College. We're a small college. Our total full-time faculty, I think at last count, was about 57. We've got a fairly traditional structure that's been in place for a while, but it's being discussed. And right now we've got a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. Two of those three must be tenured. They are elected on a yearly basis. And among other duties, I think that are important is they have a monthly meeting with the president, and then the chair gives a report to the Board of Regents every month. So we have some direct input there. And what is being discussed right now is whether or not we should go to these 3-year terms. And so I was interested in Todd's side comment there that they sometimes have trouble getting someone who's willing to commit to 3 years. And I think that's exacerbated in a small college like ours. You know, people may not even be knowing what they're going to do in 2 or 3 years, and that would make them more reluctant to volunteer. So at any rate, that is under discussion, but that's our structure.
I do have a follow-up question for you. You mentioned that a certain percentage of the faculty association leadership has to be tenured. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, we've got just a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. Two of those three have to be tenured. And of course, that is to assure some independence and safety, if there might be contentious talks. But we've had a pretty good relationship with our president, who's been here for 13 years now, which is not to say that there aren't those kinds of disagreements. But I mean, maybe an awkward way to put this is to say he's an agreeable man to disagree with.
Well, thanks so much, Michael. Okay, so the next question, does your organization require membership dues? And if so, what is the money used for? Just jump in, panelists, if you do require dues.
This is Todd again from HCC. No, we do not require dues. The only funds that we have are raised from that auction and dinner in the fall, and it's strictly for professional development. We are fortunate here at HCC that all full-time faculty have a $2,000 a year professional development fund that we can tap into for travel, all travel expenses, which of course we can't travel right now, but looking forward to the day we can. Subscriptions, professional memberships, much like TCCTA. So yeah, there's no extra money floating around.
Wade?
Sure. Well, so Dallas College is unique. We do have a membership fee. It's $90 a year, but we have a rather enormous legal defense fund, which is unique to Dallas College. And we still tap into the TCCTA's benefits as well. So we combine those. We use the same attorney. But it's important to note that we represent all faculty, both full-time and part-time. But if you're considered a voting member, you have to pay into the main kitty, which is the legal defense fund.
Wade, just as a follow-up, what does the TCCTA attorney, that's Michael Kim, he's really great. What does he help faculty with? What is allowed?
So mostly it's just, and some of them are, and of course, obviously I can't discuss the specifics because that would get me in trouble, but we have a couple of pending cases now. Most of them are grievances about work-related issues. And the way it works is that a faculty member would come to the council, and of course the council is made from, currently is made of the president of each of the campuses, of which there's 7. And then we decide in closed session whether or not that's merit of us retaining the attorney. And most of the claims they're all welfare and benefits related. Usually some of them are silly, like, well, you can just imagine. Some of them are more egregious, but we have a pretty good track record of expunging those claims. So it's been helpful. And again, I don't know how we started it, but it seems to, our big club that we have does seem to carry a little bit of weight, but it also creates somewhat of an antagonistic relationship with administration that we're trying to diffuse now that we're all one big, happy, obnoxious family, as opposed to seven separate campuses.
Well, thanks, Wade. Before we move on to the next question, does anyone else require membership dues?
We do not, but I did want to just mention that ACC, all of the employee associations are given a budget by the administration. So that is why we don't need to ask for dues. We don't have a huge budget, it's rather small, but we're able to do the things that we want to as an organization with that fund.
Okay, great. What kinds of things do you use the money for in the fund? Is it mainly food or?
Yeah, mainly food. And then we also try to sometimes we purchase the red book about policies and procedures, right? And we pass that on to each president. So like sometimes we'll get books about parliamentary procedure to share with the leadership team, those kinds of things, just to have the basics.
Thanks, Missy. So next question, I'd like to find out if folks in your faculty association leadership interact with the board directly or indirectly. And this is sort of a sensitive issue. In some places, at some colleges, it's very taboo. At other colleges, the board members and faculty members have friendships and are close. So there's everything in between.
This Todd from HCC. Yeah, no, we highly regard our board. We look at it as our third leg of the stool in shared governance. I came away from my tenure with some good relationships with a couple board members who have since left. I know that some of our current faculty and who have been past presidents have a few of their board members and their phone numbers and that. They talk quite a lot. I know that last Monday, a past president and our incoming president-elect had lunch with the current board chair. Had a very good discussion. They were all happy all the way around. And the administration would prefer we didn't talk to the board, but they don't tell us we can't. And of course, we would ignore it anyways. And except for the last year, the faculty president would present a report at the board meetings, but those have been suspended. We are still, board meetings are still remote. I would have hoped by now that they would have gone back to live, and hopefully they'll do that in September. That's what, yeah, we do have a good relationship with our board.
And Todd, if it's okay, Stacy, I want to jump in here. Sure. Sorry, Todd, but prior to this year, the Faculty Senate also fairly regularly host a gathering with board members. We'll have an evening event where we have food and invite the board members to come, and and many of them show up. In fact, I think the last one we had, which was right before the lockdown in February, I think it was in February, all 9 of them showed up. They show up at different times, so they're not all there at one time, but they all came. And we regularly host those kinds of activities so that we can have interaction with them.
Thank you, Linda. I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
So Todd, as a follow-up question, do you feel that good relationship that the faculty have with the board has impacted policy at all?
More than likely, yes. When the board says something that we're concerned about, we'll discuss it, and usually one of our members that knows a couple people, especially if it's the specific board member that made a comment, we will try and make sure that they get the information they need regarding whatever that question is, as opposed to waiting for the administrative side, because there's always 2 sides to every coin.
Yes, true. Mark, I see your hand up. Mark Murray?
Yeah, I was the end of the last question. Actually, I wanted to refer back to you about paying dues.
Yes.
We don't have dues at STC's Faculty Senate. I don't even know if we have any funding from. We used to have some funding for like food at our meetings, but that went away too. But my question was for the college or colleges that are using the membership dues. does it cause issues in a relationship between the paying faculty members and the non-paying faculty members? Do the non-paying faculty members feel like they're being represented by the faculty senate since they're not dues paying members? Because we're looking into how we can raise funds too, but I'm just wondering if that's a good option or not.
Well, I guess I'll respond to that since we're the big money raisers. So first of all, we have really specific guidelines on how we can spend money. One of the ways we can spend it is on recruitment. So how we creatively do that is we often have recruitment lunches. So, you know, that's where we invite everybody, like, hey, come join the Dallas Faculty Association. And so that works pretty well. And the only other way we can spend it is on scholarships, other than we commit to our legal defense fund. It's hard for me to say whether or not non-members think that they're being excluded, but I think that they expect the Faculty Association to represent all faculty, regardless of the member. The difference in Dallas is that if you are not a member, you don't have access to our legal defense fund. That's the big catch. Otherwise, we still go to the chancellor and to the provost and vice provost and go for bat for all faculty. We have a hard time recruiting, for example, members in the workforce, which is the area that I'm in. Like, for example, nurses. For some reason, we have a hard time getting nurses. They just don't want to join, most of them. And they're El Centro faculty too. That's my people. So I'm constantly yelling at them and throwing them food and hoping they'll join. But I think still they sense that we represent them. But if they get in trouble personally, let's say they're terminated for non-cause or something else goofy, I just have to kind of shrug my shoulders and say, hey, you should have joined. Can't help you. Go talk to Richard at TCCTA. Maybe he can throw you a bone, but we really can't do much. But chances are they're not a member of the TCCTA either. So they're just kind of on their own. I don't know if that helped or not, but that's how
it does. That was a great question, Mark, and thanks, Wade. Michael Berberich, what about, did you want to talk about the board situation?
Yes.
With the board? Okay.
Yeah, I mentioned that that our chair goes and reports to the board every month. But as a small college, we encourage faculty to attend the board meetings. As we say, it is good for you to be recognized, so they put names with faces when they are making decisions. However, because we're also in a small community, I can say that one of the benefits there is you run into board members at the grocery store, here, there, other places. And sometimes it's, hey, how are things going? And it's a general thing, but other times they'll pull you aside. I'll give a very fun, quick example that relates to TCCTA. And that is that I think it was September of last year, I had an essay published in Messenger about the use of dialect versus standard edited American English. And one of our board members is African-American, and he called me up and we had some nice discussion. And we agreed that we were going to get together after that, go out for coffee and have a much longer discussion. And then somebody, that would be me, had 7 classes and came down with COVID. They got pretty nasty. So I have not seen him yet, but we have planned on doing that. And that is a direct result out of an encouraged interaction and out of passing along that particular article.
That's a great example. And I'm so glad to hear that you've recovered from COVID. Sorry you went through that. Glad you're doing well.
Thank you.
Mike, can you speak to this issue about talking or not talking to board members?
Yeah, I can. I'm not sure everybody's situation, but at Tarrant County, the board is really off limits. We don't have, nor are we ever encouraged to have any relationship or conversation with our board. Now, again, ours are referred to as the board of trustees. I heard the word board of regents. Those would be different sort of entities, but to a large extent, we have no relationship. It was expressed to me that really that the board is the chancellor's board. And anything that we need to do, we go through the chancellor, which is sometimes, very efficient and very useful. And sometimes run into a brick wall. Yeah, we definitely have access to, of course, our chancellor, our provost, regular meetings, but not so much our board of trustees.
Thanks, Mike. Dale, I see your hand is up. Did you have a question? Dale, you're muted.
Just to make a comment that at Alvin Community College, we are encouraged as vice president and I'm vice president of the Senate and then the president. Either one of us, depending on our availability, are invited every month to attend the executive desk of instruction. So we're able to sit with all the deans and talk to them about our concerns. We bring up any issues. And we are also invited to come and give a presentation for the Board of Regents. And oftentimes we're asked for feedback as well on what's happening with faculty.
And Dale, what college did you say?
Alvin Community College.
Okay, thank you so much. And do faculty members give presentations to the board? Is it monthly?
Is it monthly? Yes, it's monthly.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Wade, I see your hand up. Can you tell, how does this work at Dallas?
Yeah, well, so I'm guessing there must be something in the water in Dallas-Fort Worth. Yeah, just like Mike said, the official tone is that faculty should interact with the chancellor, and the chancellor raises our concerns directly to the Board of Trustees. That being said, we have a lot of Todds on our faculty association, so we just somewhat ignore that, and the faculty leaders, have developed relationships with the trustees. We're actually, and we're very careful, but we're involved in their elections, using our private emails and private accounts, because that's a no-no as a state employee. But I will say at Dallas College, we do have an excellent relationship with the very senior level administration, the chancellor. We meet monthly with him. That makes a lot of high senior administrators nervous because they don't get to meet with the chancellor, but we do. So that's why we're not too concerned about having direct contact with the Board of Trustees, although we do anyway. Just like Todd said, we would just ignore that if they told us not to. Matter of fact, it probably piss us off and say, you want to watch? And we will go meet with the Board of Trustees. But for the most part, that we have a good relationship with those on the board, or most of the board members, and we're active in their elections, trying to make sure that whoever is elected is pro-faculty, or at least pro-student, and that we can support them.
Thank you so much, Wade. We're running out of time for this first section of our discussion on structural organization. And Richard Moore will be talking, he'll be asking the shared governance questions. But before we move to Richard, is there anybody in the meeting that has a question for our panelists about the questions we've asked so far? Okay, no questions. All right, Richard.
Thanks, Stacy. And this is a fascinating conversation. I talk on a pretty regular basis with faculty senate officers about what y'all are dealing with, but it tends to be one at a time. It's great to get y'all in one room like this and bounce things off each other. We want to pivot now to talk a little bit about kind of the effectiveness of your faculty senate in engaging with your administration and the college decision-making role that you have at your college, and ways that you advocate for faculty and offer feedback.
It'll be when we get back to school. It should be more when we're doing gymnastics, okay?
Gina,
what? So Gina, it'll be a little while yet.
Gina, could you mute your, thank you. Speaking of offering feedback, I do want, just in the middle of all this, to say, we sent out an email today to our database asking for feedback on issues related to critical race theory. Check your inbox for that to find the link for it. Carol has put the link here in the chat. So if you don't want to dig through your email, just click on that link, that'll take you to it. It's been out for just a few hours and we've had over 300 responses so far. So it's something that people care about. And we need your opinion on this because we don't know how to advocate for your point of view if we don't know what it is. So please have a look at that. So having said that, in your roles as faculty Senate leaders, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about your relationships with your administrations and how you move the faculty point of view into the process, move it forward, and try and be a part of the decision-making at your college. And how successful are you in it? Does it work? Does it change the outcome or have an influence on the outcome going forward? So I'd like to ask each of y'all on that. Mike, why don't we start with you? What does that look like at Tarrant County?
Well, first of all, our chancellor has informed us that critical race theory will not be an issue. If you want to teach it, that's fine. We absolutely support academic freedom at Tarrant County College. So that's very encouraging news from our chancellor, although I don't know that it's made it out to the faculty yet, but it's coming. Specifically, I have probably at least 3 meetings a month with our chancellor. We have a meeting where you're in this position where we're in meetings to figure out what our other meetings are about and set agendas and things like that. And we also, every month, we meet with our provost and we set that agenda in which we have a meeting for all of our presidents, vice presidents, et cetera. So we have regular attention and focus on the faculty concerns. In fact, it took me about 6 months to figure that out, that some of those meetings really were trying to persuade the faculty for, bringing forth issues and things like that. They were there to talk to us, as opposed to sometimes I think that they were there to talk to themselves. So I think we have a very attentive administration with faculty concerns. However, when the question about how successful are we? Well, I think it just depends on the issue. There's been many issues where we have just done things forever a certain way. And I just had the courage to ask a question. Can we try it this way? And our chancellor was certainly open to that. For example, extending when our final grades are due in the semester to give faculty a little bit more time at the end of a semester, something like that. They had no problem with that. We've had other issues. For example, we're sort of transitioning to an open space design at Tarrant County, and that decision has met all kinds of resistance, even though faculty absolutely oppose it. So it really just depends on the decisions, or the issue. I think they're open to change. They're open to considering new ways. But they also, the one thing I think we all get to see is that a lot of these institutions, particularly at TCC, it's a big institution. And there are so many moving parts to a school like that. And there's just so many other things that honestly, I wouldn't have considered how it affects how other departments and divisions and other sort of parts of the college are all connected in ways that this one decision right here really has a ripple effect that I wasn't aware of. So it's very interesting to kind of know how things really work. You see how the sausage is made, et cetera. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. But I think our college overall is very receptive to communicating with us. Whether we're successful or not, I think it really just depends issue by issue.
Thank you. And yeah, I find in talking with folks around the state, sometimes the best part of taking a leadership role in the faculty is getting that look behind the curtain and seeing what's involved, things that it never would occur to you that it even had to think about it. It can be really enlightening. Missy, how about you at Austin? How do you create that engagement, and what kind of results do you tend to see from that?
Thanks, Richard. Well, we moved to a liaison structure a few years ago. And what that means is each employee association has a cabinet level administrator who is their direct liaison. So for Faculty Senate, our direct liaison is our provost, our chief academic officer. And so we have monthly meetings with the liaison. But it's actually really lovely because we know anytime there's any kind of issue, if I even just have one faculty member who has a concern, or I have a group, I know that I can immediately email my provost, my liaison, and they're going to get back to me within 24 hours. I mean, their turnaround has been amazing. And like I said, each association has their own liaison. So that's one way that we connect. And that's sort of like our person at the ready. We have monthly meetings with the chancellor as well. So faculty senate leadership meets with the chancellor and the chancellor's cabinet, and that happens monthly. We often try to work with our liaison to develop the agendas for those meetings, because sometimes our provost will say, oh, I could take care of that for you. We don't need to take it to the next level. We also have joint employee association meetings with the chancellor and the cabinet. So all 4 of our associations, we generally meet quarterly, I want to say, or maybe by the semester. But we'll have all 4 employee associations, their liaisons, the chancellor, and the entire cabinet. So those meetings are really valuable because we communicate with our employee association colleagues ahead of time, and we can raise the level of some urgent issues. And it sometimes seems more effective if the administration can see that it's not just the faculty senate, it's the faculty senate plus other associations. So those are our big normal ways of associating with our administration. But in recent years, our chancellor has started an informal get together with the president of the faculty senate. And he used to call them tacos with the president, but now it's tacos with the chancellor. We just get together for breakfast tacos several times a semester, and we share what's going on in the faculty world. The chancellor is able to tell us some of those, how the sausage is made, some things that we may not be aware of that are those ripple effects, so that we can become educated. And I would say, I couldn't agree more with that idea that sometimes as a faculty member, before I got involved with my association, I would be like, why can't we just get that fixed? And how come that's a problem? And now, as I've been able to communicate with our administrators so much more closely, one, I recognize that they're good people who really care about the work of educating students. And 2, I realize that just like faculty, we sometimes feel put upon by, administrative pressure. They also have pressures. They've got the board, they've got the legislature. So it's really helped me understand. And I think that can only serve to increase the trust between our faculty organizations and our administrators when we recognize the constraints that we're all working under. So I hope that answered your question. Oh, you had asked how successful are we resolving issues? I would say it depends, very much like Mike said. Some things we initially heard that we were going to be limited to web conferencing platforms. We have 4. They were like, we're getting it down to 1. And faculty were like, y'all just asked us to pivot from being face-to-face to being online. We each learned a different software platform. Now don't ask us to learn a whole other one. And they have been really respectful of that conversation. So I think that's really valuable. But sometimes there are things that really we just can't fix. Like one year we had a campus that had to close. There were structural problems with this high-rise building, and it couldn't stay open, and it didn't matter, right? Like it didn't matter how many faculty really said, but that's our home, we want to stay there. They couldn't fix it. So sometimes we're very successful, sometimes not so much. I will say, if any of y'all have great procedures for how to formally close the loop on some of these discussions, that's one area of weakness that I think we have. We take it forward. We don't always get an official response. We just get we talk to them and they tell us what the outcome is. But I would love if any of y'all have like a formal response process where it gets posted online or something. I'd love to learn more about that. So that's it.
And it seems like that's the sign of a healthy relationship, when both sides learn what makes things difficult for the other side, that there are things that you thought, oh, that's just one thing, why don't they just do it? And you find out, no, that there's more. And when they find out from you, we asked you to go online, now we're asking you to go back. That isn't just flip a switch, that it goes both ways. You mentioned 4 associations. You've got the Full-Time Faculty Association, the Adjunct Faculty Association, the staff association? And what's the
Yeah, I just put it in the chat because I saw Wade's question.
Oh, there we go.
So yeah, we have Prof Tech, and those are most of the time supervisor staff. So you know, they could really run the gamut. And then we have our classified association, and those folks are often you know, subordinate staff. And sort of that's, I don't know exactly how you get Prof Tech or classified, but there's designations when we're hired. So yeah, and our adjunct association is separate from the full-time faculty association. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not so good. But those are our 4 associations. And interestingly enough, administrators do not have an association. So our deans NUP, they don't have anybody advocating for them. And I believe, like Mike said, yeah, we're in meetings with the chancellor and the provost constantly where our deans aren't. So that's an interesting dynamic.
That is interesting. Wade, what does this look like in Dallas? I guess, how have you traditionally been structured, and do you have a sense of the direction y'all are going in?
Regarding critical race theory, is that what we're?
No. The how you engage in the decision-making process.
Yeah. So as well, and again, we're in flux because of this transition, but we do meet regularly with the chancellors I mentioned before. That's a no-brainer. We also now, for the first time, we have a provost in charge of all of academics, which is something that, by the way, the Faculty Association pushed before, because we had said the president of each of the colleges was the highest academic official. With one unified college, we knew that the chancellor didn't have time to mess with the minutia that we were interested in. So there is now a provost handling academic affairs, and then each of the schools have vice provosts. And so we meet regularly with the provost, we meet regularly with the vice provost. One of the things we're pushing for now, and again, kind of going back, Missy, to your comment of this hybrid leadership thing, is we're trying to compel the vice provost to meet regularly with faculty representing disciplines. That's why I put in the chat earlier, the contact hours and determining, is really good for me. So thanks, I made a note of that. But the point is that what we really are pushing now is collaboration. And we get a lot of cooperation on that level at the highest level. Where we have problems with is middle management. That would be what we call chairs, deans, who maybe, as Missy kind of said, they feel excluded because they don't get to talk to chancellor. Well, let me get out my smallest violin. Really what we need is we need all to work together to solve problems. And it doesn't help if you don't collaborate with faculty, because we are the, frankly, who drives the college. It's not administrative. Nobody comes to Dallas College because we have a great chancellor or great, administrative. They come because we have great faculty, hopefully. And so I think they need to understand that we're the rainmakers, and it makes sense, SENSC sense, and sense CENTS sense to work with us. And so we kind of push it on that level. Where it became tricky was last year when COVID-19 hit. And at the same time, we were going through this massive reorganization. To the chancellor's credit, he did create what was called a rapid response team made up of various leadership and included 4 faculty members. And I was one of them who got to participate in that. And, and I got a lot of hate mail from faculty and also love letters. So, that kind of comes with the territory when you're in this role. And you build up a thick skin, but that's okay. But that's kind of how we work on it, is working on collaboration and picking up the phone and cutting deals and trying to break down bureaucracy. We have a lot of problems with that. And the more that we can just let's just use common sense approaches is really, I think, where we're moving towards. If you're familiar with Reinventing Organizations, that book, we're trying to move towards more of a teal organizational structure where you're self-management and not so much of an army structure, which is kind of how most colleges were set up back in the late 20th century.
Yeah, I was actually talking with one of your provosts this past year who was noting how quickly things were getting done with COVID, and the colleges just had to turn on a dime. And they said, now that we know we can change this fast, we should keep some of that. He said, especially with the IT department. Michael, how about in Galveston? Talk a little bit about that. You're still muted.
Am I okay now?
There we go.
Thanks. And I need to backtrack for a quick second with Mike Downs. I need to understand something because it will temper what I need to bring up. And that was, there were two terms mentioned about Tarrant County, which was Board of Regents and Board of Trustees. Do you have two separate things, or is there one entity?
No, we just have a Board of Trustees. That they're just not, they're not called regents.
Okay, well, the reason I ask is because you'd made the comment that in interacting with the board, that it had been made clear that this was quote unquote the Chancellor's Board. And my sort of thinking on that is it's not the Chancellor's Board, it's the Voters' Board. Okay, and that someone else had mentioned earlier about getting involved with the campaigns for regents. And we did that some years ago and overturned two established incumbent regents. And as one of my colleagues put it, there's nothing like a good change in the polls to get the attention of the rest of the board. So I have that as a comment. And then I kind of want to know where that's coming from, but that can be a separate thing. In terms of what we do at Galveston College, in my little notes, I only have one thing about leadership, having been a former faculty senate president during a time of conflict. And what I will say is that very often there's not a faculty point of view. There are faculty points of view. And even if it is, 80 to 20, I found that part of leadership was making sure that all points of view were carried forward. And that led to some peace in the valley, so to speak.
And so when you're bringing a faculty perspective to an issue that your administration is dealing with, how do you do that? Do you have like normal channels, regular meetings, or a process that you refer to?
Yes, our elected faculty representatives meet with the president every month, and then following that, they meet with they give a report to the Board of Regents.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. Todd, what does this look like in Houston? How did y'all, or what channels and processes do y'all have?
A lot of it the same way. Our faculty senate president usually has regular meetings with the chancellor, probably once a month. Meets regularly with the vice chancellor for instructional services and other vice chancellors as things might crop up. When issues crop up, they usually start at the faculty level and go up through the chair, up to a dean. If the resolution isn't forthcoming and it's a big enough issue, they may bring it to one of our standing committees, and they'll look into it and they may make recommendations. And usually if things get aired in a Senate meeting, they somehow or another get back to the administration, at which point they will pick up the phone or send an email and probably have something to say. Every fall and usually in the spring at the first Senate meeting, the chancellor will ask if he can come and speak to the Senate. We've had other vice chancellors for whatever initiative they might be pushing asked to come and talk to us, and we have asked them to come talk to us. The president is in a regular meeting with the deans once a month, and other management type people going all the way up to the vice chancellor. And any other committee that the vice chancellor may want him to be on, or the chancellor would ask him to be on and or chair, and then they will be asked to maybe find another one or two other faculty to sit on those committee meetings. We also have what I think is a robust past president's caucus or council. We meet quarterly, and we kind of do an overview of how the current president is doing as a faculty senate president and give them feedback. And on occasion, it might get crashed by the chancellor, and which leads to some very good discussions because we know how the sausage is made, and we're hearing things from other faculty, and we can bring it right to the chancellor. And it's worked out fairly well over the years.
That's interesting. Yeah, and that can help broaden the conversation by adding some longevity to the table.
And institutional history.
Exactly. Talk a little bit about, I guess I'm thinking like traction would be the word that comes to my mind. Let's say you're doing all those things that you would normally do to engage. Often it works. What do you do when something doesn't work? You've brought something to your administration, your chancellor, maybe your board, and you don't prevail on it, but feel the need that it's not resolved.
It's going to depend on what that is. There may have been, I'll give an example. There was a committee earlier this year with faculty, deans, a couple of administrators. There had been a question brought by the board as to how many overloads faculty were teaching. So it was a question on whether or not we wanted to modify our cap on overloads. Didn't go well. And as a matter of fact, when it was finally presented to the faculty senate as a foregone conclusion, and that was another part of it, because the faculty senate did not get to vote on it, that it basically fell apart. This was one of those rare instances where shared governance didn't come out very good at the other end. We've had other instances where things aren't going the way we would really like, and we end up having resolutions that are brought from either standing committees or they're brought up from the floor, depending on, and it may not even be a faculty issue, it may be a system issue. And once that happens, those are then delivered to the person who is responsible for it, be it the vice chancellor for instruction, the chancellor. We've on numerous occasions delivered resolutions directly to the board chair because it had to do with the administration and possibly they not working as well with us as we had hoped they would.
Yeah, I think this is important because, I mean, it's not that you're going to win every battle. I mean, that isn't how it works, and probably shouldn't be. I mean, that's why they call it shared governance. But there are times when you feel like that we need to push this a little further. Let's take it one more step. Go to the appeals court with it. And how that happens at a given school might be different at one school versus another. Wade, could you talk a little bit about Dallas? Do y'all have examples of these things where maybe you didn't prevail in the first go around but felt the need to pursue it further?
All the time.
Yeah, no, never.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the way it is. For example, the current in this reorganization process, so it's really fresh in our minds. We had proposed, for example, because we're one of our drives is to reduce the amount of bureaucracy at Dallas College. We think that keeps us separated in the levels of contact. So we use the 7 degrees of separation model. And if it didn't pass that test between the student and the highest level, we said it was a fail. And one of the ways that we recommended is that we used to have for years and years what we called faculty coordinators. And faculty coordinators did all the grunt work for making sure the schedules are okay. And in this reorganization, for some reason, they wanted to get rid of the coordinators. And so we had recommended having official chairs, which would come from faculties, and you would take a 2-year leave of absence from being a chair, and I mean from your faculty teaching, but you still remain faculty, but you deal with it. They took that name from our proposal, and then they just kind of created this kind of weird pseudo dean position that handles it, but it's still another level of bureaucracy. So now you've got vice provost, and deans, and chairs, and then faculty, and then students. So now you're 7 degrees, and Kevin Bacon can be very disappointed because now there's so much separation. We said this isn't going to work because these chairs, first of all, it's a lousy position. Nobody wants it. We have a 3-year contract at Dallas College faculty. The chairs are administrators. They don't get that protection. So they're having a hard time finding people to do this. And so I feel like doing my little told you so dance and say, told you this is going to fail. Wish you'd listen to us. But we're not going to run up in their face and say, look, we're going to try to come up with, you know, a solution to kind of solve your problems. Whether they'll listen to us, I don't know. But we it's always a constant negotiation. And we try not to hammer it down, but try to make our case. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. It just depends.
And it does seem like some of that has to do with the credibility you develop over time. You've gotten to know these people and work together, and they know that y'all are smart people that come up with good solutions, that they at least need to listen to what you're bringing. And that can sometimes get you that second hearing.
Yeah, I would hope they would think that. Sometimes I question whether they think that. One of the lines of thought is that faculty don't need to be administrators. And we thought, well, we don't want to be administrators, but really, who wants to do that BS? But the reality is that we're the ones most qualified to run our disciplines. SACS, COC says that's who should be doing it. So why don't you just get out of the way and let us run it as we're supposed to? There's I think a control issue that's rather irritating, that we have to kind of break that barrier and say, look, it's not about who reports to. We're not an army. Allow us to make good things happen and get out of the way. And if we can convince them to do that, we'll all be much better off. So we'll see how it goes, but it's a constant battle. I should say constant negotiation. I shouldn't use the B word. It's a negotiation.
Yeah. Missy, I'm really interested in what this looks like at Austin Community College, and Wade, I think, just mentioned something about the personalities and these relationships. What does that look like at Austin and the relationships you build? Does that play some role in working past an impasse?
Yeah, I think so. And what I will say is that at Austin, we have also passed resolutions. And when we pass them at the Senate level, we generally make a decision about whether that resolution is to be delivered to the chancellor or directly to the board. What I have learned in my tenure is that you have to have trust. And so we had a resolution that really needed to go to the board, but I felt like it was appropriate to just let the chancellor know, because that's sort of like going above somebody's head to their boss without, speaking to them first. So I think that the trust dynamic has been improved over the past, I want to say 6-7 presidencies. We used to have a really conflicted relationship between the Senate and our administration, and it just suddenly became very apparent that that wasn't serving anybody. So now we try to, we don't try to blindside anybody. That would be, my preference and what I've learned, that if we can communicate and explain our concerns, they genuinely want to help. If it doesn't work and we have to go and do a bit of an end run, we have the ability to do that. And I've been impressed with our administrators. They have reminded me, they're like, all right, well, you have a monthly, board presentation that you get to give. It's appropriate for you to share those things with the board if we're not doing what we ought to do. So to me, when it doesn't work, I still say, try to go back, try to work with the administration first, and then, and only if there's a real impasse should you take it to the board. We have, I think it was Todd who said there's not a faculty point of view, there's faculty points of view, and it's so true. Some of our faculty want to pass a resolution at every Senate meeting and feel like if a resolution hasn't passed, that their time was wasted. And there are other faculty who feel much more like resolutions are sort of like a nuclear option. We shouldn't be using them constantly because they can lose their effectiveness if we do it every time. So I will say that serving as president, you really have to balance that and really try to help faculty understand the whole you catch more flies with honey approach really does seem to make a difference. So that's
what I'm hearing here is that you need to have a psychology professor somewhere in your faculty organization to handle these things.
I joked with our provost. He was like, how do you always get people to do what you want? I was like, dude, it's all carrot and stick. It's just all carrot and stick. Psychologists coming up. So.
There you go.
Yeah, or have one on call.
Yes, yeah. On retainer, yes. We have legal counsel and therapists on call. Michael, you're at a smaller institution than some of these others, and that can sometimes changing the mechanics of how the conversations go. But the relationships might be very similar. It's all people we're dealing with, and you've seen things happen over time with different presidents, with very different dynamics. Talk a little bit about that. When the faculty come with something and it doesn't prevail, and you feel like we can't just let this go, we need to take this another step. What does that look like at Galveston College? And you're muted. We'll get this all figured out one day.
I'm trying to learn the lesson of good manners and listening, and I keep forgetting to unmute myself. As I'm fond of saying to my Comp 2 students, it all comes down to methodologies. Okay, that different presidents, different boards will have different methodologies of how they want to accomplish what they want to accomplish. And so in order to deal with that, you have to understand what those methodologies are and deal with them as appropriately as possible. Not always an easy thing to do. Listening matters. But in terms of being heard, let me approach this from a little bit of a different way. And I've taken some notes on what you guys have all been saying. And one thing I found effective, which goes back to methodology, is what does any president listen to? Well, they have to listen to the board. So having some kind of openness with the board is crucial, which is why I'm bothered when that kind of thing is verboten. But the other thing is SACs. They listen to SACs and the board listens to SACs. So if you can find specific things within what SACs claims as their core values, and they do claim shared governance as a core value, you can present that to any president or any board saying, well, SAC says this. So I think it was Missy just pointed out this new AAUP shared governance survey, first one in 20 years. And there was some really good material in there that one might reference, because that's the kind of thing that boards ought to be paying, and chairs and administrators and faculty ought to know and ought to be paying attention to. The other thing that I wanted to bring up from what someone said was talking about resolutions, et cetera. And that is that the public often doesn't understand what that means. They might not understand what a vote of no confidence means, other than on the surface it means no confidence. But they don't understand the internal culture, the dynamics of those things. So that part of what I see our role is in representing to the public at large, in our interactions with people, what we do as faculty, and what the culture of higher education is, and how that's different than corporate culture.
Mike, at Tarrant County College, I know these issues come up. How do you press an issue when you feel it's risen to that level that you need to do that?
Well, of course, my dogs all start barking. Sorry. But I think, again, it's our direct communication with the provost and our chancellor. I can tell you that, the real problem is when they don't want to work with us in terms of agreeing with what faculty want. We really do kind of run into an impasse. It was imparted to me that the JCC, our Joint Consultation Committee, is just that, a consulting body. And so when issues come up where we just adamantly disagree, we can take some decisions like votes of no confidence, things like that. But internally, I don't know that makes a whole lot of difference to the chancellor. sometimes the decision is that they have the power to make these decisions and they think it's in the interest of the college to do so. And there's not a whole lot we can do. As suddenly we stop almost becoming faculty and we just start another segment of the TCC employee population. And all we can do is just continue to raise our voice about it. And I think a lot of times is, sort of like what Missy was saying, is that even when things aren't going your way, you can at least try to influence what you can influence to get the best outcome that's possible, but it may not be the one you really wanted. So I think like a lot of times you have to, sort of push where you can. And again, we don't have that much power, but we have some influence with, and that's, you just kind of use that as much as you can. I think particularly, an issue that really rallies the overwhelming majority of faculty, those are the ones that are kind of frustrated when you don't get your way in those, because then you really wonder, well, what is the value of all of these expert opinions here? And it just kind of seems to be falling on ears that are no longer open for decision making. They've already made decisions. And I've had Chancellor tell me point blank, that ship has sailed. Whatever that issue was, it sailed. We're moving on from that. And when you get to that, there's, we don't get 3-year contracts. We get 1-year contracts every year at TCC, tenure or not. And so at some point, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, it does seem like people have where I've seen the most opportunities here are when the underlying issue doesn't go away. Sometimes the ship has sailed and we're moving on and it's done. But sometimes the thing that caused the concern lingers and you're still going to have to deal with it. And so that's where you have an opportunity to say, we may have made this decision, but the problems persist, and so we can't neglect them. So you're right; it depends on the nature of the challenge you're facing. I want to jump ahead just to make sure that we get to it, because I think this often comes up and is often crucial in this, and that has to do with the fact that we're dealing with real live people. This isn't. I always say that when we're dealing with the state policy level, we're not talking about some German clock with a bunch of gears and everything just works perfectly and just wind it up and it goes. We're dealing with the messy world of people, and we have to factor that into how we work together. Can you all talk a little bit about what that looks like? If you've worked with several chancellors, for instance, or several provosts or vice presidents or deans, where you've had to resolve a conflict, how do you factor in that human dimension of this, and how do you honestly bring your own human dimension to it and say, here's why this matters? Has that been a dimension of your work that makes a difference and you'd like to share with your colleagues? Missy, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Richard. I will just say I have found the communication method that has worked with most people for me is to find a common goal and then ask them how to serve that goal. So what I have learned is that at Austin Community College, and I imagine at most of your institutions, students are the people we're there for. So when I went to our chancellor and said, how do I help you serve our students? What is our relationship going to look like that's going to make it so that we can get along well to serve our students? He was immediately all ears because he cares about students. I care about students. And I'm asking, how do I make your job easier? How do I help you? I think when you start at that kind of space, there is a trust that develops when you both know you have a shared goal in mind that can take you a long way. So, I'm sure there are many different personality types, but if you can figure out what drives your administrators, especially if it's something that also drives you, then that is a connection that you can make and then learn how to work together to meet that goal. So that would be my statement there.
Thank you for that, kind of getting out of the zero sum. I want this and you want that, and we're going to duke it out. Find the things that are shared, and especially when you have a leadership that also wants to engage that way. If you have an administration that flat out doesn't, that's hard to work with. But seems like most people do prefer that. Michael, why don't, I mean, you've got.
And I think I can be heard again.
Yes, yes.
Yay. Okay, very quickly. I've learned a couple of things. One was from our friend Beeman Floyd. Okay, and Beeman has talked about dealing with legislators who are across the spectrum and moving away from this sense that some people want to perceive everybody as bad or good depending on the side. And so he goes into those discussions assuming a degree of goodwill. Another skill I learned actually was from one of our high-ranking administrators some years back. And we had a contentious issue going on. He pulled all the players together and he said, okay, here's what the issue is. Here's what the problem is. Here's what I think your agenda is. Here's what I think your agenda is. And he went through like 5 people and said, here's what I think your agendas are. If I'm off on those, straighten me out, and then we'll move forward from there. And then let's see, having all that out on the table, let's see where we can get to from there. And I found that I thought it was a really skillful strategy.
That's a great exercise. Todd, how about you? Just the people, the personalities you've worked with.
Yeah, I've been thinking the same along the same lines as Michael. In most cases, if the administrations are going to come ask the faculty senate president or say one of our standing committee chairs, how can we work to resolve a particular issue? Was it a compensation? Is it professional development? Is it student outcomes? Whatever. They're looking for solutions as much as we are. I found very complete congeniality between most of the senior leadership and the senior administration. I can't ever remember being in a meeting where something I felt was going to be shoved down my throat. In fact, I was more than willing to go back and say, well, wait a minute. Okay, I need to take this back to the faculty. You just can't make these decisions unilaterally. Maybe you can, but frankly, you're going to need some faculty buy into this. And if you don't get it, you're going to have you won't have a revolution, but you're going to have a lot of upset people. So I think it's worked well for us. So, I mean, I've even had the chancellor come to me and ask me, what can we do to resolve some issues, and who should we bring in to do that? It works very well, I think.
That can be really powerful to keep in mind what's in it for them. Why do they need to engage with you, and then help them get that. If it's something y'all could work together on, you need the faculty engaged. We want to help you get that. Here's what that will involve. But then you're looking at it through their eyes a little bit and understanding what their motivations are. Right.
It's just like Missy said. What can I do to help? For whatever the situation is. It's never like, well, I don't know. You need to be there, and we're all here for one reason, and that is to have our students succeed. There's a lot of parts to the puzzle to get them to succeed, and if we all work together, hopefully they will.
Mike, do you find this part of it has a relevance? Missy, were you saying? Did you want to say something? Oh,
yeah. Back to we're all humans, right? And it's just important. I think we're all good guys, good people. We just, the intentions are there we're trying to be helpful. A lot of us all have our own agendas, but at the end of the day, we are, just like I think we're all saying, there's a sense of congeniality, and we're trying to work together to solve these problems. Doesn't mean we don't have competing visions on some of those answers, but I get to speak directly to our top administration, top leadership. The president has me on his cell phone, and I have his, so I mean, we can text. So I think that absolutely matters to develop those relationships. And if you don't do that, then people, when it really matters, that's when you have problems. So.
Good point. Wade, did you have thoughts on this as well?
Well, one of the things I'll take away from today's discussion is what Michael had said, that, faculty are not, I'm going to paraphrase, faculty are not homogeneous. We are very much have different views. And right now there's nothing more clear than that than at Dallas College if you were to poll our faculty. I believe we have a pretty good relationship with our administration. I can pick up the phone, do that texting thing. If you were to ask my colleagues I represent, I don't know if they think that. I get the message, you're not standing up for faculty, vote of no confidence and all that kind of crap. So what I believe is that, first of all, I'm a strong believer in God so loved the world, he did not send a committee. So it's really difficult to get work done when there's so much change and faculty want to meet about it for 2 months. You know, God forbid there's an English faculty member in there who wants to talk about where to put the comma. Sorry, I'm business faculty, so I can make fun of my English colleagues. But you know, whereas there's all this change, and sometimes we just have to make a decision what we think is best for faculty because you elected us. And if you don't like us, well, go elect somebody else. I would love to give this job to somebody else. It's not that much fun, to be honest. It just has to be done. But the objective should be is to develop long-term, mutually beneficial relationships. That's a customer service thing I teach. But that really is what it's about. And I think in the long term, that is how you get things done. It's not by threatening. It's not by yelling and screaming. Ultimately, as Mike mentioned before, it comes down to the board of trustees are in charge. It's their decision. All we can do is take a look at what they're deciding, maybe help influence them, but we have to really kind of march with those orders if we're really serious about the long-term effects of our students, which is why we're all in this game together. So again, it's kind of a perspective. And if you were to poll Dallas College faculty, we are not going to all have the same opinion, but I think the majority of us do believe that collaboration is the way to go. As Missy said, the real key is good communications. And I think that we complain about that a lot. We complain that we don't get enough good communications. I question now whether we as faculty leaders do a good job of communicating to our parties of concerns either. It is something I constantly have to work on. It's ironic because I teach in the field of communications and I'm not always the best one at it, so.
It's not easy. Linda, you have had your hand up and I have wanted to make sure we got back to you before the end. What did you want to share? You're muted, Linda.
Linda, are you still there? Does anybody else have a question for our panelists or a follow-up?
Okay, Stacy, I'm sorry. It's okay. We're way past where I was going to make a comment, and it's not critical, so we'll leave it alone right now. Okay.
I apologize for not getting back to you quicker, Linda. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I have a question,
yes,
if I could.
Go ahead.
I am coming into a role as president of a faculty senate at a small college, and the outgoing president had a very difficult relationship with our campus president. That's kind of part of the reason he decided not to continue in that role. And I was just wondering if anyone has any advice about, going into those first meetings with administration, knowing that the recent history is not great and what I can do to get us off on the right foot this year.
Does anybody want to speak up about that particular question from Naomi? Any panelists? Michael.
I can pop in on this one. When I was faculty senate president, I knew that a big part of the job would be listening to people. I didn't know how much it would be listening to people, but just learning to keep my mouth shut and just listen as much as I could was a big first step.
Yeah, I'd have to second that. That was what I was going to say. Listen to Michael. Is that go in and listen. Let them get it all out. And say, okay, what can I do to change your mind or help you? You're going to be so new and you're not looking to be asking for a lot up front either. So I would just look to see what you and the Senate could do to help this particular, president of a campus, find out, What's got his knickers in a twist?
Mike Downs,
Yeah.
I saw your hand up. Oh, and Missy. So Mike and then Missy.
I just sort of echo some of those sentiments, but I think particularly it's never good to go in and not just acknowledge whatever situation you're in. Just, again, open honesty is the way to build new relationships. And just, again, I don't know how much has to be laid out on the table, but at least acknowledge there's stuff that, has that you'd like to change, and it's always today's a new day. We're going to move from moving forward from whatever point you're in. Just, again, try to have the best open communications possible. But we're bad at that. We're all bad at that. Even the ones that are really good at it are really bad. It's so easy for the miscommunication to take place. And it's challenging. So cut yourself some slack as well as you're figuring out a pretty challenging job.
Missy.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, Naomi, grab some of the names off of this list, reach out and get some advice, because I think that all of us, that's where doing this kind of thing is helpful to me, is learning from each other and getting some, I find using people as a sounding board makes a huge difference. Instead of going into that difficult meeting, just hoping for the best, try it out on a colleague, ask them how they think it sounds. But yes, asking them how you can work together to heal over some of the wounds that happened in the past. I think that's a really great way to start. As Mike said, acknowledge those concerns and then show that you're a different person. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Samantha Croft has her hand up. Samantha, do you have a question? Samantha?
Thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering if any of you have been faculty leadership when you've gotten new administrators, a new chancellor or provost or something like that, and how you approached that establishment of a relationship with the new person in charge.
Oh, I could speak to that. During my tenure as faculty president, in December of 2012, it was kind of noticed that no one had seen the chancellor for a while. This went on into January and February. By that time, we found out the chancellor had gone on FMLA. So obviously, all the doors shut as to what was going on and why. Finally, I think it was the February board meeting, I finally looked at the board and I said, "Where is our chancellor? And who is in charge?" Because we haven't heard anything. And from then on, we didn't have any answers to where the chancellor was, but it appeared that chancellor was not coming back, and they finally appointed an interim chancellor and then a search committee. And by that time, my tenure was over, so I was not part of it. So it was an interesting 6 months from then on.
Wade, you were going to speak about this.
Well, we are going through that right now. Chancellor May, our current chancellor, is leaving, probably going to go off to the Biden administration. I don't think it's been trumpeted yet, but so the vice chancellor will take on that role, and that was approved. And so, and then I've gone through a couple of presidents, campus presidents myself. And then through this organization, we have all sorts of new vice provosts that are popping up. And again, I think it was Missy, was it you, the Taco Tuesday thing or something? I can't remember what it's called. I personally think having these ways to meet informally, to get people to put a face about it, so you're not just mindless automatons going to meetings, you're robots, but you're actually people, you can have fun, is really the secret of the sauce. Especially when you get to know someone, is that they know you're a real person, that you know that your proverbial poop stinks like everybody else's. You make mistakes. That's just the way it is. I think that really helps. And so we'll be having a new chancellor when that becomes effective. I don't know, but we know who it is, and we have a great relationship with them. That being said, you were to poll the faculty at Dallas College, there's a certain percentage of them who didn't like the idea that we weren't consulted, blah, 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 about the hiring of this chancellor. It was just done rapidly. people are going to, haters are going to hate, people are going to complain. That's just kind of part of the gig. But you just have to do your best to work with this, what the hand that you're dealt, and make relationships along the way. And hopefully the people who are in these roles will be receptive to that. If not, well, then you may have to try a different approach.
We've gone a bit over on our time. Oh, I see, Missy, you've got your hand raised.
I wanted to say a quick thing, which is, thank y'all so much for coming. And I wanted to reach out, and I'll put my email in the chat. I had hoped to get a form together where we could all, contribute our emails so we could stay in touch after this event, and I didn't get it done in time. But I'll give you all my email address, and I would love to put together a mailing list if you're interested, where we can continue this conversation and chat beyond these formal opportunities so that folks can ask more questions. I'll put it in there. If you're interested, shoot me an email. I'll get your name to where it's on the list.
Thanks, Missy. That's such a great idea. And I also wanted to ask you all, before we close, what other topics would you like us to cover in future meetings like this? Do we have any strong recommendations?
Stacy, I don't have anything to say on this particular subject. I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to have to go. I've got a bit of a drive in what appears to be a lot of weather downtown here in Houston. I've got to get back out to my places. I've got a class that starts at 4:30. So I need to go. It's been a lot of fun. It's great to see everybody again, and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you so much to each of our panelists for your time today. The discussion was fascinating, and just hearing some of the differences among our faculty associations, but also the good similarities too, and shared values that we have. I appreciate your time. If anybody has additional questions or suggestions about future panels that you would like to have, I'll also put my email in the chat, and you can email Missy as well, or Richard or Carol. And thanks again to everyone. Thanks for your time. Richard, do you want to say a few words?
Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate it. We will follow up with y'all and make sure we keep the conversation going and relevant. So we'll need your feedback. Thank you all.